Hi, this is Carlos. Look for my book, Lessons from Mars, at Amazon or wherever you buy books, or visit my website, lessonsfrommars.net. Hi, it's Carlos Valdez-Tepena, and I am happy to have you back into this series of podcasts. So I want to talk about how we got to the framework that we did. I'm going to begin to get into the particulars in just a few episodes. But remember, I was at IBM for a time. While at IBM, I learned about motives and what motivates people. And I was able to apply that knowledge to the insights I was having while working several years later at Mars about why people weren't collaborating. It's because they were much more driven to achieve and to get things done individually based on this motives model I've talked about. Then the question that arose out of that was, so how do you get strongly individually motivated people to collaborate? And that was a question I was facing as I worked in the summer of, I think it was 2011 or 2010, trying to build this framework. Question again, how do I get highly driven individuals to see collaboration as just another thing to be achieved? How do I get them to feel that collaboration is as compelling and as important as the individual tasks they've been assigned? What I was trying to stimulate was more intentional collaboration. And if you've been following these podcasts, you'll know exactly what I mean by that. How do we get them to make collaboration more thoughtful, more planned? That's the goal. The answer is actually pretty simple. It's, in one word, clarity. One of the things I noticed in the data, the people who were saying, hey, I know I should collaborate more, I just don't. If you looked at their teams, one of the questions I used to ask in these interviews was, so what is it you share? What are your shared goals and work? And more often than not, they were all over the place. The team members did not agree on what was important. Was it top-line growth? Was it bottom-line growth? Was it retention of key associates? There are a whole list of things it could have been. And it was rarely aligned. For a while, I worked on that alignment with teams. I would help them at least agree to that. What I came to realize was they couldn't possibly be intentional if they didn't all agree what required collaboration and what didn't. So it wasn't just about shared goals. I've talked about that in previous episodes. It was about where the shared work was. They needed clarity about what the shared work was and, frankly, why it was important. Just because you tell somebody, go do this with Bill, doesn't mean they'll do it if it doesn't feel compelling to them. So the key to intentional collaboration I posited, because at this point I was still in the research and development phase, was clarity of why collaboration matters and what specific work would deliver the goods. The big why, the big what was clarity. Oh, and then I also realized another big output from the research was that teams were really terrible at doing what they said they were going to do in terms of their meetings and running things consistently. Their team processes were not very effective. And this was across all teams. A model started to take shape that suggested that teams, in order to be intentional, needed much greater clarity about why collaboration mattered and what was the specific work that would deliver on that why. And the third piece was discipline. They're going to have some modicum of discipline in order to deliver on that big why and that big what, and to take advantage of the intentionality that the clarity would spawn. So I came up with these things called the three imperatives. Clarity, which drives intentionality and is supported by discipline. That was, in fact, the first model I developed within this research and development. It wouldn't be the last. It's a useful framework, but I learned quickly it's not enough. And we'll cover a bit more about those imperatives in the next podcast, and then we'll start talking about the practices which grew out of those. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please rate the show on iTunes or contact me with your feedback through my website, lessonsfrommars.net. You can find my book, Lessons from Mars, at Amazon or wherever you prefer to buy books, or, again, through my website, lessonsfrommars.net.